All right, everybody. That's right. It is Old Man Vass. I am with you because it is Saturday, October 5th at 3 p.m. We're actually on time. And if I've got it right this time, you should be able to hear me perfectly, unless I screwed up again like I did last week. But I think you should be able to hear me fine, and everything's going well. Now, I made a promise to you that, as you can see on the screen, that I would have the noted author Blaine Lee Pardoe. He would be on with me, that he would be doing his challenge about civilizations, sci-fi civilizations. And you know what? I did not lie, because here is Blaine Lee Pardoe. Hello, Blaine. How is it?
Oh, I'm doing good. I bent your rules a little bit when it came to civilizations, though. But that's part of the game, right?
Kinda, because God knows I've broken my rules so far a couple of times. Yeah, so that happens.
Yeah, but it's been a lot of fun. It's always good to talk about other universes and other subgenres within sci-fi and things like that. Different settings is how I kind of view it. I think it makes it kind of fun.
Well, that's the whole point of the top 10 challenge. Is I love sci-fi, always have, all the different aspects of it. And I know there's a lot of people out there that either a little bit or a lot, whether it's a video game, anime, or a movie, we love it. So why not talk about it? And so that's why I love to and compare the way we look at the sci-fi, because it's like, D&D or a good comic book or a movie. You can spend hours talking about it with a friend, and you have such different views of the same thing, but you both enjoy it. So that's kind of the idea.
Yeah, should be a lot of fun. I've got some interesting twists on my list.
Well, I feel like this one, this is the first time I feel like I'm at a disadvantage, because just to let people know, when I say you are a noted award-winning author, that's not a joke. I mean, I thought it was 50. You told me before the show, it's up to 100 now, about 100 books. You're a military historian. You have been bestseller on the New York Times bestseller list several times. You've got Land and Sea series. You've got the Blue Dawn series.
Yeah.
You've got formerly of the BattleTech series. You've got and there's a true crime series with your daughter.
Yeah.
And there's a couple more. I mean, and then there's the Galaxy Edge series, right?
Yeah. My first book in Galaxy's Edge just went up yesterday, I guess. Was on Amazon. So, yeah, I'm playing in a lot of different sandboxes, and I have a lot of fun. Well, I'm kind of a 13-year-old kid trapped in a 62-year-old body.
That's funny. Okay, I would never have worded it quite like that, I imagine. But let me ask you, what made you? I mean, you've got decades of experience. You God help me, you told me you did 5 books in a year. That's enormous. I mean, Stephen King. This is like Stephen King levels of prolific, this is all stuff that works. I mean, people enjoy each of your books, each of the different series. What made you decide to start writing books?
I've been doing it since college, honestly. I just enjoy writing. It's very therapeutic. It's a fun hobby. I enjoy doing it. I did it in college. I did it right after college is when I started getting stuff published. And it was just a thrill of doing it. And I'm all over the place in what I write. I write business management. I write true crime. I write military history. I write, all sorts of different stuff. It's whatever I am enjoying reading. If I'm reading political thrillers, I like writing political thrillers. It's just a way to be able to enjoy what you do. And to me, it's a great way to kind of kill my time. My financial advisor finally told my wife and I, it's like, you really don't have to work anymore. I quit the corporate world, and that was like 4 or 5 years ago. And this is what I've been doing full time. And I think I spend more time now working than I did when I was actually working because I'm doing it for fun.
Okay.
It's a great hobby. It happens to pay a little money on the side, but it's going to be a lot of fun. I just enjoy the heck out of it. And I meet a lot of interesting people along the way.
Well, I know that you enjoy speaking out about your passions and
Yeah.
the challenges and life in general. You're not a quiet wallflower. In
No.
fact, we once met. We were talking our day jobs, political commentary for me. We were on a couple of panels together, and that's how we got to meet and got to talk. And we just kept the conversations going from then, which is always great.
Yeah.
So it's always fun. But this is the first time I'm going to be talking to you about sci-fi. I got to ask you, of the books that you have written over the years in sci-fi.
Yeah.
Well, actually, two parts. One, why do you like sci-fi so much? And then the second thing would be, do you have a favorite book or character in all the sci-fi books you've done?
Um, yeah, I do. I have both of those. Why do I enjoy sci-fi so much? Sci-fi is just gives you different settings. To me, good stories are always based on good characters. And you can have a very basic plot if you have great characters that the readers care about. They'll go with a very basic plot and really enjoy it. To me, sci-fi gives you settings that allow you to do some things that you don't normally do, and be that piloting a three-story, robot war machine, or
Yeah,
piloting a starship, or
the
you know,
Force.
fighting off alien invaders, or whatever. It
Mhm.
gives you a setting that you get to play with. And to me, I find that fascinating. And certain settings, and I've got some in my list, are just pure fun. You read them and you go, I see something else. This could be transported. This doesn't have to be about a guy piloting a starship as a captain. This could be Horatio Hornblower, in the
Right.
Napoleonic era. It's the same story, but it's a setting that makes it very fascinating.
No, I can understand it because isn't that's how I got into sci-fi. It's and in particular sci-fantasy first, and then into sci-fi because it was back in junior high school. My buddy had a copy of The Lord of the Rings, and he let me borrow it. Read the whole thing. I was like, and I can visualize that world. You fall into that world, and you're like, yeah, I love these characters. In particular, I love Gimli. I love the dwarves. And then when I started playing D&D, which was like a natural offset, I've always played dwarven thieves, dwarven assassins. I just love that character. But it came from me just visualizing it. And
Right.
then, of course, then came, and this is on the heels of course, Star Wars changing the universe of movies. So that kind of just, and then we had computer games coming out. So that was kind of cool. Hey,
Oh,
Tony, good to see you.
it's good you play D&D too. I'm getting ready to start up a campaign. I haven't done one in a year. It's time. I got to kick off a new campaign. I play games a lot. I enjoy them. It's fun, and it gives you a chance to take part in your own story. And that the setting is very different, but you have a good time, be it science fiction or be it fantasy.
Oh, yeah. So I didn't give you a chance though to also answer. Do you have a favorite book and or character?
I have a favorite character. I have a character in one of my books called Adam Kane. He is very loosely based on Gunnery Sergeant Highway from Heartbreak Ridge.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
that type of character. He is, the grizzled NCO who happens to be freaking brilliant at what he does, which is leading people. but his real life's a mess and everything else. And when the war comes, when aliens invade and we have action being called up, Kane's there, but he's foul mouthed. He has no respect for officers, most of them. He comes up with little nicknames like Major Nuisance and, Lieutenant Pain in the Ass and stuff like that. And he's just a character, but you need that kind of character in a war. You need the NCO who's actually going to nut up or shut up. And, he's that guy. And for me, he's just a fun character. I can't tell you why I enjoy him so much, but I enjoy writing him.
Well, it's kind of like that guy. I don't know if you follow Warhammer 40K, which I love. Caphias Kane. He is, and people who know the series, you'll know about him. He is a commandant, and he's incredible. Oh God, he's so funny, but he's competent. But it's kind of like we said, when it comes down to get the job done, he's great at getting the job done. But you're hearing his internal monologue, and it's like, what the hell? Everyone else, the external is like, ooh, sturdy, strong-willed. Internal is like, he's looking at her butt.
Oh yeah. Kane's like that in the Land and Sea series. I just enjoy him. He is fun to play with. His wife divorced him, but he refuses to accept the fact that they're divorced. He's got flaws all over the place, and I like that in him. I like somebody who's not a pristine heroic character, but he's just chock full of anxiety and flaws and things that make him who he is. And he's the only character. Other characters I'll put through an arc. They grow, they evolve, they change. Kane is a constant in the universe. He is where he's at, and that he's not going to change. That's actually his arc, is he doesn't change, and that's what makes him a fun character.
Just to remind, and Tony was asking because he's not sure. You're talking about which book series?
Oh, the Land and Sea book series.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is one of your newer series with mechs.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we launched it last year. We launched with 6 books last year.
Yeah. And your 7 is out. Book 7 is out now.
Book 7's out. Book 8's in edit, and I'm working on book 9 right now.
Okay. So, folks, you have the knowledge now that if you start into the series, you got books coming. They're already there. So you're not going to be kind of like, what's his name? GRR. You're not
George R.R. Martin? No, George, I deliver. George R.R. Martin, we're still waiting. It's never going to happen.
Sadly. But if he was at least honest with it, fine. Then we'll just make our fan fictions and we'll go on. Don't keep us waiting.
Yeah, his latest post was, I can't get it done because of all the fascism out there or something. And I was like, okay, really? Like fascism's hunting you down and forcing you to not write? If he wrote 200 words a day, he would have had 4 novels done. So
exactly, just turn off the TV, let your battery on the phone die, and just type. Just type. Stop talking. We don't care about your politics, George. Just do the book, and then come out after you get the books done. Then tell me your politics, which I'll tell you I don't care anyway. But that's another thing. But we won't go down that road right now. That's my Sunday show on No Sound Bites Allowed. By the way, before we even start with any of that, let me ask, is there a way for people to follow you to know like the book series and stuff that you're working on?
Oh, absolutely. I'm on Twitter, Pardoe870. I'm also on Facebook. Feel free to reach out to me if you have questions or, if you want to follow me, go ahead. I encourage it. You're going to find I'm unabashed. I'm an unabashed conservative. I don't hide from that. I'm not crazy. I'm not alt-right or whatever the hell that is. But I'm just a normal American conservative, and I have certain values and ideals that I uphold. That's it. So you're welcome to follow me. I encourage it. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I do. I actually have been following you for years now, and I encourage others to do so as well. But with all that said, so we know a little bit about Blaine. We know something about the man behind the words, the books, the images in our mind. By the way, when are you going to get? Are they ever going to make a movie out of one of your things? I mean, you've got enough stuff. There's enough depth. Are they ever going to do that?
We've had some talks about doing some animation stuff around Landon's.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm a little hesitant because I've got some television stuff coming out on true crime and this spring. And I will tell you, once Hollywood gets involved, the people with the money get to make decisions. I'm actually kind of worried about Hollywood getting involved with that stuff and tweaking it to do some of the crazy stuff Hollywood does. So if I do anything like that, I'm going to want to be involved more than just signing over and saying, here, go make a movie or make a series on it. I'm going to want to be more involved with it just to make sure that they do it right.
Okay. Well, it's great and it's important to make sure your vision is kept whole, unlike, say, Rings of Power, where they screwed up that. And it's failing because they abandoned the vision, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, they did. And that's a very good example of what happens because the money does drive the scripts. The people with the money determine what goes on. And that gets a little weird sometimes. So you got to make sure you're partnering with the right people.
Yeah. Well, that's enough of the heavy stuff. That's enough of we understand a little bit more about you. They don't care about me, and that's okay. Because I'm not that. I'm only kind of sort of interesting. Depends on the topic. But the reason why everyone's here today, and I thank you, Blaine, for this brand new channel that has almost no one, but yet he was willing to answer the call and said, "Yeah, because this is fun."
And we know each other. We take care of our friends.
Absolutely. And I appreciate this. So we're going to do the top 10 sci-fi civilizations. And like an idiot, I did not put a limiter on it when I asked you to do it. And I didn't realize how wide a net I had cast, because we're talking movies, we're talking books, we're talking video games, we're talking comic books. I don't even think I said no Marvel. I just said just civilizations. And didn't think about it beyond that until I was making my list. And I can tell you, I've been working on my list up until 10 minutes before the show started.
You probably did a better job than I did, because I didn't stick with the literal definition of civilization. I went with kind of themes or universes or things along those lines. So mine's a little vague, but if you want to, I can kick off with number 10.
Absolutely. Is there any limits you put or criteria you put for your list?
No, I kept it real open. Some of this is going to be things that I like that are sci-fi that are in comic books. Some are movies, some are book series. You name it, I kept it. Some are TV, some are books and TV together. I really had a good time with this.
Okay. So this sounds like it should be quite the list then. So go ahead, start with your number 10.
Number 10 is in the comic book category, and it's a subculture of Batman. There was a series that was put out, an animated series called Batman Beyond.
Yeah, good one.
Batman Beyond is my number 10. It's a sci-fi series. It's set in the future. Bruce Wayne's an old man. He's developed a high-tech bat suit. Terry McGinnis takes it over and goes to town wearing the bat suit. And there's a new Batman in a brand new Gotham. It's very cyberpunky. Before we really had a good grasp on cyberpunk, I think, at the time. I really enjoy Batman Beyond. I think it's better than a lot of the universes that came out. It did spawn several different comic book series.
Mhm.
Some were better than others, but I always thought that setting was good and it was highly respectful of the original Batman. And I always thought that was good too. So that was my number 10.
You know, that is, I didn't even think of it that way, but that civilization was really good. And yeah, it is good. I did like that. Um, it's kind of interesting because I hadn't considered it, but yeah, it has. I was a fan of Batman Beyond. Great stories in there, and you're right, very respectful to the heart of who Batman is and the reason why there is a Batman in
Right.
Gotham. I can't fault you on that. But for me, in my top 10 list, I was looking at the civilizations. I said, okay, they have to be powerful, they have to be expansive, they have to be stable, even if they're dead, even if they're dead civilizations, even if they're defeated, and whether or not they're war doesn't matter. Whether they're beneficial or despotic doesn't matter. Didn't care about any of those things. So it's scope, power, stability, and then a little bit of cool memories thrown in there as well. So that's my limiting factors on it. And with that all said, I start my top 10 list also in a cartoon, which would probably surprise a lot of people. But I'm not going with a direction like you did. I went to the Jetsons. Yes.
Yeah. You know
And
what?
and,
Not bad. Not
and
bad.
it's like we've got the super future, but it's not a dystopian anything. Everyone has pretty much what they need, but there's still capitalism. I mean, he's working for Sprockets versus the other guy, Cogsworth. Um, Life is easy. They have automation. The kids go to school and you got a housewife making everything. Everything's just a push of a button. They're living our lives, but it's so much better. And yet they have the same damn complaint we have. But it's like it's a little bit of everything you would want in the future, where it's bright and cheerful, but yet it's not different at all.
And we had flying cars.
Yes, and we have flying cars, and you have to imagine, even though it's not explained, you have to imagine that the civilization there, they have to have other planets and other places that they can go. They never really say, but you got to think they do.
Yeah.
So I think it captures, without being specific, it captures all of the things on my criteria. And so that's why I put it on 10. I don't know, and this is up to the chat. So, chat, this is where you guys start coming in. As we go through, whether it's live or afterwards, you have to pick a choice. It's either Blaine's number 10, Batman Beyond, or my number 10, which would be the Jetsons. And you can tell us why in the comments or in the live chat, but you got to pick one. And so we're going to be looking forward to that to figure out who wins, because it's going to be me, my channel. I'm going to win. But, you can pick anyone you want as long as it's, me. And
Nice try. Nice try.
yeah, you never know. So that was my number 10. What do you think of it?
I like it. It's good. The Jetsons, I never thought of it as a civilization, but you're right. And it does offer a lot of interesting possibilities. And there were a lot of stories in there. And it still holds up today. The same could be said of watching the Flintstones. You can watch it today and it's still an accurate, you still get a chuckle out of it.
Oh yeah. Well,
And there's not a lot of series do that. You get Johnny Quest. There's a lot of stuff from that era that still holds water really well.
Oh yeah, Johnny Quest. I didn't even think of Johnny Quest. Might have made my list if I thought of him. The Flintstones are like the Jetsons, just flip backwards in time.
Right.
They're
right.
the same thing. But I liked it. So, that's my number 10. And it sounds like I'm winning because Tony said Jetsons. So I've got one.
All right.
The rest of chat can come in and maybe even afterwards in the comments. So it doesn't mean I've absolutely won, but I'm leaning towards a win. Okay. What's your 9?
Number nine is Jack Chalker's series, which is pretty obscure, but it's the saga of the Well World. Now, I'll describe this. There's a series of books about this. The Well World is a giant computer that runs the mathematical equation that defines our reality. And the world has imprinted on it, by the race that created it, a set of civilizations. They're laid out like hexagons on the globe of this giant planet-sized computer. Each hexagon has a completely different race in it. It has different rules of physics. Some have magic, some are high tech, some are ammonia-based creatures. And he built this incredible, I don't know how to describe it, beyond a fertile place for storytelling with all of these different races. And if you go down to the Well World, you are actually transformed into the race of the hex you end up in. And that you're stuck as that race. And there's a lot of drawbacks and a lot of positives about it. But these become the seeds for when the computer reboots, essentially, and repopulates the universe. It uses the different zones on the Well World to do that population. Jack Chalker does this and does it in such a masterful way, because it's a complicated subject, does it in such a way that you really just enjoy the hell out of it. It's a great series. Chalker was one of those fantastic writers that came up in the 60s and 70s and a little bit in the 80s. He's dead now, but his work was very popular at the time, but it's really drifted into obscurity. And I always recommend people check out the Well World series. It's such a uniquely different look at alien species interacting with each other, a lot of them. And it really, I think in many respects, there have been times when I've watched Star Wars that I wondered, how much did George Lucas flip through the twilight at the night of the Well of Souls?
Okay, so does that mean he's kind of doing the virtual reality thing, like the universe is virtual reality, before anyone was talking about that?
No. This is actually a real thing. And there's wars that are fought on this world with these different races. And if you step into a different zone, you're now governed by the rules there, which means, your high tech stuff may stop functioning, or
that could be a problem.
things like that. So, I mean, it really does become this intriguing series of books. And I mean, they are fast reads and they're fun. And I still have some weathered out, page-torn copies of those books tucked away. I stumbled across one not too long ago, and I was like, oh, man, I am so back into this. It's great still. It still holds water with me.
I have to check that out because I'm not familiar with it. So I'm not familiar with it, but it does sound interesting. I like the concept. I'm trying to visualize it, but I can't quite, which is good. That means I should read it.
Yeah.
And that's the reason to read it, because I can't quite visualize it and I want to. But I think you'll be able to visualize my number 9, because I didn't go to a book, although there is a book that created, but I went to a movie. And I think, and it's not one of the big name movies. In fact, I like this so much, I wanted to put it higher on my list, but I couldn't. My number 9 is Dark City. Dark City is a movie. It was The Matrix before The Matrix came out. Have you ever seen it?
No, I haven't seen.
Oh, it's so great. It literally is part of the inspiration for The Matrix. So you've got this one man who wakes up, doesn't remember his name, doesn't remember what's going on in this kind of classic noir kind of city. So it's like 1940s-ish, dark lights, it's nighttime, and there's a murder mystery going on. And he's trying to figure out the answer to the murder mystery, the answer to who he is, and then the answer to where he is, one after the other. So the mystery keeps growing. As he's trying to answer the first one first, everything starts building and building. I won't go into too many of the details here, but as it turns out, aliens are involved. People called the Strangers. And the Strangers are pulling all the strings, which you do see early in the movie. But then you get to understand why. Now, since you haven't seen it, I don't want to spoil it too much. But
I'm putting it on my list of things to take a look at.
Yeah, it's a great movie, and it's a lot of the elements of the Matrix of what's real, what's your perception of what is real, what do you do when you suddenly wake up to the reality versus your perception? How do you deal with that? And so that's kind of the story that's going on there. But these creatures, the Strangers, and I'm not spoiling anything because you know that about them very early on, they are special because they are far reaching. They are incredibly powerful. They are absolutely stable as a civilization. They have one major flaw, just one. They only have one flaw, and I won't say what it is.
Oh, okay.
That's part of the whole thing. And Tony saw it. He knows Dark City was rocking. And this is a 1990 film. So for the lack of CGI, there's very little, but it holds up for today. A lot of, not even that much practical, but the stuff that they do have absolutely holds up. So that one's a little harder for people because not everyone knows my movie. Not everyone knows your book.
That's okay. That's why we do these things, because what people are going to do is go, I've got movies to download and I got books to buy.
That's it. And new worlds to expand into and enjoy. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
That's the side benefit of why we do this, folks. It's you get to have some of the joy that we have. So what's your 8?
Number 8 is a book series called Bio of a Space Tyrant by Piers Anthony.
Say it again?
It's called Bio of a Space Tyrant by Piers Anthony. And it's an interesting concept. He starts out with a character who is essentially revered as a galactic Hitler. Okay? He's a horrible person. And this is about the actual story of his rise to power, who he is, who he became. And what you realize is, as you're reading it, the label that he's been given, the space tyrant, he's this horrible dictator, isn't really fair. And he's not this really horrible person. He has been put in horrible circumstances and responded in kind. But it's one of those that I flipped back through it not too long ago, and the parallels to a lot of our modern politics are there. And it's way before all that. This is a 1970s book series.
Oh, wow. Way before
this. But you start looking at how people are demonized and how history paints you a certain way, when in reality, that's not what happens. And it's tempting for me to go through specific examples to modern politics, but I'm going to skip that. All I'm saying is, if you believe at all that you're being manipulated at times by the media, and that sometimes there's more to the truth, this is a great book series. And the sci-fi setting for it is fantastic. And you're just slowly peeling this onion and you're learning the depth of the character. And by the end of the series, I got to be honest with you, you're actually very sympathetic to the character. You're like, this guy wasn't this tyrant. He wasn't this horrible person. He was the product of all of these things that were thrown at him by horrible people along the way. It's fascinating, especially in this political climate, to read a book like that, or a series.
I know Piers Anthony. He's also a prolific writer. I've read a few of his stories. It's not coming to my name. I know his books, but it's not coming to. Didn't he do? Did he do Once in Future? No, he didn't do Once in Future King. He did something else. He's done a couple of books that I've read. And I know he's a very good writer, very well known. I didn't know about this one from the 1970s, but it sounds kind of like maybe like a Citizen Kane.
Yeah,
Kind of
it
like maybe
is. It
even
is in
Tomb
many
God
respects.
Emperor.
It's Citizen Kane on steroids, and it's just it's fascinating to read. I remember reading it as a kid, and I was just totally drawn into it because I was like, wow, this tells the story of a villain who really isn't a villain. He's the product of everything that was happening in his life. That doesn't make him a bad person. And it really changed a lot of my perceptions around how I think about people.
That's interesting. I like that. That's a very interesting kind of way to look at a universe and a
Yeah,
civilization. It's like, how do they turn on their own over time? What starts off well, and then the perception changes, but the elements of the civilization didn't really change, just a perception of it. That's kind of
right.
interesting. Um, my number 8, I was having a problem because I was stuck between two different choices, and I really wanted to have them both. So the one I didn't pick is the civilization of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy,
The
and I mean the
brilliant one.
book series, fantastic. I mean having a civilization where you could have a book that tells you about the babblefish and the three worst poetries in the universe. One
I
of which
never
was,
could get the hang of Thursdays.
you know, and Belgium, the worst curse in all the universe, Belgium. Um, I
42.
love that. And I mean and they had a civilization that was running, and they had businesses, Maglathea. They had all of this going on. That's a great civilization. That all of this could exist, and the last restaurant in the universe at the end of time. Fantastic. I mean, that's a great one. But I didn't go with it because it
Wow.
wasn't really clear the civilization. You could see all the elements of the civilization, but you couldn't see the civilization itself. You couldn't really nail anything. You had a bunch of planets, and there was an overriding. I mean, Beeblebrox was president, so there's a civilization, but you just didn't really get it. Obviously, I like the entire series, but so what I went with instead is a movie from 1988. And it's a little esoteric. It's more popular than Dark City. You've probably heard the name if you haven't actually seen it. It's a sci-fi film called They Live with Rowdy Piper. And Keith David.
You got to do the glasses.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. It's kind of a cult classic now, and everyone knows I came here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum. When a classic line gets memed all the time, but you gotta love the civilization isn't our civilization I'm talking about, though. It's the alien civilization. In the movie, they're called the Free Enterprisers, or they're called the Blue Aliens, because when you actually get to see their face, they have a lot of blue on it. But you got to think, they're on Earth. They have. I'm not spoiling anything. It's 1988 film. They're on Earth. They're integrated. They're getting everything they want. They're giving select humans what they want. They're taking over. This is like the perfect kind of infiltration and subjugation. It's slow and quiet and almost entirely peaceful, and no one knows it's happening. But yet they're doing it. That's their stuff, and they can travel through interstellar distances. So if they got the technology, they could have barn stomped and just took the planet over. I mean, if you can go from one planet to another in a different part of the universe, you can take over Earth anytime you want. They just didn't want to. They'd rather just, okay, we'll just buy up all the businesses. We'll just be in all the entertainment. We'll just convert the culture subliminally to just do what we want. I love that civilization. That is so ingenious, and it's like so deep in the movie because you don't really get that. I mean, I've watched it several times, And as I watch it more, I get like, wow, there's so many layers to this. Carpenter did a great job with that.
Oh, it was. It was a good one.
Yeah.
That was what it was a good movie.
Yeah, on so many levels. And I mean, there's the flat out, well, I just enjoy sci-fi and, rock'em sock'em kind of action. They got that. But then there's more layers and like, no, they really thought this through. And the aliens aren't stupid at all, nor is the battle with the aliens stupid at all. And it's even kind of open-ended on at the ending who wins.
Right.
They don't tell you. So I kind of like that aspect of it too. It's like, what happens next? So that was my number. That was the 8 I chose.
That was a good one. That was a good one.
I try.
That's going to drift me into my number 7, though, because I went to the 1980s as well. And I went to the movies. And we're going to see the face-off of the Kodan Empire versus the Star League in The Last Starfighter.
Oh, I was thinking about that. I didn't pick it, but I remembered that.
Where a video game dropped off on Earth and on various planets is used to recruit the best starfighters who are then taken to defend the Star League from the evil Kodan Empire. It was cheesy, it was corny, it was fun, and you had this vast, these vast interstellar enemies going at war, and the recruitment effort was brilliant because it was video games, put out, and whoever scored highest was then recruited to go be taken off to be a starfighter. It was such a great movie at the time, and I hope Hollywood never goes back and redoes it. I don't want it redone. I don't want to reboot. It's perfect the way it is.
Well, the whole thing that it was a scam. It was an illegal scam to put it on Earth in the first place.
Oh, yeah.
The guy who's doing it is known intergalactically as like the biggest scam artist. He's only doing it to get paid. He doesn't care who wins.
Yeah.
I fondly remember that. And they had the copy of the guy.
Yeah, they replicated him so that,
and his girlfriend's trying to figure out his little brother.
Yeah.
Go back to sleep. You're having a nightmare. I remember that line.
It's great. It's a fun movie. And it's one that I'm surprised it doesn't make the rounds more often.
Probably because, no super big star is attached to it that I can think of. And maybe that's the only reason why. But I mean, in terms of the graphics, they were cool.
Fine for the time. You look at them now and you go, okay, that's a little cheesy, but what is it from the 1980s? I gotta be honest with you.
Yeah, they weren't that bad for them. I mean, compared to some stuff today, it's not that bad. That was a really fun movie.
So what's your number 7?
Well, you had a good choice, but for my number 7, I went to TV. And I went to, well, I guess some are calling it classic TV now. I don't think it's classic, but Star Trek Next Generation. No, it's not Starfleet. It's not the Klingons or the Romulans. It's the Borg. The Borg, because the Borg qualify. We're talking about they control an entire quadrant. They have virtually, I'm not counting some of the later movies because I think they mess them up, but they had no internal strife. Everyone worked together. The ultimate ant community, ant colony.
Oh, yeah. It's the ultimate in socialism.
Absolutely. One leader, everyone just follows and obeys. Everyone is communal. They're all drones. There's only one leader in all drones, and they're all on the same page, and they just expand. And what's the saying?
Assimilate.
Resistance is futile.
Yeah.
Assimilate. I love that. And so they're powerful, they're stable, they're long lasting. They're organized. They're pretty much everything you would want from a civilization. And you can't even say they're evil because the Borg, in and of themselves, they're not evil. They don't that doesn't even compute into their mindset. There is no such thing as evil for the Borg. There's those who have assimilated and those who are going to assimilate. That's it. There is no other
Very
option.
binary. Everything with the Borg is very binary.
Exactly. And evil never comes in. It's never good or evil. It's just, is this good for Borg, or will it be good for Borg? That's it. And they just keep going there. And you can't really, Starfleet was lucky enough not to run into them early on because we'd have been wiped out. And it's only because of Q having his little game that we even found out. And sadly, they found out we were here, and they're like, and now they're coming.
Well, they actually do show up in the series Enterprise.
I didn't see them and I didn't watch Enterprise.
Oh, okay. They show up in Enterprise because of the time travel thing. There were some Borg that were found frozen on Earth from when they went back with Zephyr Cochrane. And
that thing. Yeah. Uh-huh.
And they had this whole episode kind of tied to the Borg, which Enterprise is one of those series that everybody struggled with. I can't argue with your choice because I had my number one is Star Trek in general as a universe.
You gave it away too soon.
Oh, I know, but I can't argue with it. You brought it up, so I'm going to say it. But my number one was Star Trek in general because not only Star Trek laid a foundation for every science fiction series that ever followed. If Star Trek hadn't existed, we wouldn't have Star Wars, I don't think. I don't think it would have happened. I don't think we would have had a lot of what we consider progressive science fiction. It wouldn't have happened. It just wouldn't. So to me, I'm with you. I'm Star Trek. It was my number one in general, and that includes the Borg because I cast my net pretty wide. I took the whole universe, and
I narrowed it a little bit to within that universe. I had to pick one, and even when you consider, the Klingons and Starfleet and all the even the Dominion, you're looking at all the different groups there, and the Dominion was real close. Because I was really thinking, I love DS9, and I was really looking forward to the Dominion and Alpha Quadrant. But the Borg are just, because even in the Dominion, there is different voices. They do have arguments. They have different points of view. The Borg are uniform. There is no difference. It's all Borg. There is no individual. There is no I or we. Hugh was like such an aberration. They kicked him out. There is just Borg. And so that's why I had to go with them as 7.
That's good.
So that was my choice there. Yeah.
All right.
Don't forget, folks, like, share, subscribe, vote. Pick a choice. But go ahead.
Number 6 for me, Galaxy's Edge. I know it's not because I'm pimping my new book in there. I gotta tell you, what I like about Galaxy's Edge is kind of a mix between Star Wars and Warhammer, and I call it the way it was talked to be when one of the original guys who created Jason Anspaugh said, "I want you to think of it as Star Wars told from the elite stormtroopers' perspective." It's military sci-fi, but it's military sci-fi from the actual grunt perspective, not from the rebellion and everything else. As a matter of fact, they're stomping out rebellion through some of the books in the series. What I find absolutely intriguing about it is while the books all kind of stand alone, they have a lot of interconnectivity between them and a lot of threads that are pulled through all of them. And there's definitely a direction that series is going. And it's fascinating to me. And there's elements I found of Warhammer in there, just buried, that I'm kind of going, I like that. Because Warhammer was on one of my alternates. And the problem I have with Warhammer is Warhammer's become wokehammer. It's all the female space marines and all,
don't rewriting
their own history and all that. I didn't want to push that, but I like Galaxy's Edge because it is gritty. It is sci-fi military written by guys who were in the military.
Well, that's a big bonus.
And I mean, it's the stuff that's in there you could transport to any time period, but I just love the direction. And they've done a trilogy of prequels that were set during the Savage Wars. I just cruised through those books. The stuff is also interconnected and interwoven. I just absolutely love it.
No, you know what? Those are great lists, and I always love. The worst thing about when I see people writing about military who haven't done their homework or haven't been in the military, because you can tell the difference instantly when you see someone who has no clue what the military is. They just have this vague idea in their mind, and inevitably they always get it wrong. They make it look so silly or so. They're either absolutely totalitarian or they're absolutely Keystone Cops. They always get it wrong.
Well, and I'll give you a true story. When I started doing work with Galaxy's Edge, with Wargate, the publisher, they were like, "We want you to do a book on this," and I said, "I don't know if I really have the experience to do it." I said, I would like to make an arrangement to go to watch the Rangers actually train in the field. And I contacted them, and the next thing I knew, they were going, "Why don't you come to the Best Ranger competition? You can be a member of the media." And Wargate actually sponsored me to go. And I spent a week as a member of the media at Best Ranger competition.
Oh, that's sweet.
I was there for the whole thing. And I mean, I got, like, when they ran out to the helicopter, I ran with them to the helicopter. I mean, I was up close and personal, and it really does help you get that perspective. But that's the level that these guys expect. That's what they want in their series, and I enjoy it. It's fun to do that, and it's great working with publishers who do stuff like that. So
no, I love that, because then you get that. It's the little minutia. Some, depending on how bad they are, and we've seen some of the bad depictions out there. But they can either be very farcical or they can just be annoying because either they don't understand it at all or they screw up the little things that take you out of the story. And that's the thing that gets me, and I hate that. So I am happy that they are getting it right, because it makes that difference. It really gets you into the story when you're like, yeah, that's right. That's the way it should happen. I love that.
Cool. So what's your number 6?
Well, my number 6, I have a fondness in my sci-fi for the 1950s, 1960s, which inspired a lot of stuff since. But I have a great fondness for some of the stuff there. And remember not because you were alive, but there's a film from 1951, black and white, sci-fi. This is the whole B-movie genre, sci-fi B-movie genre. But this one's actually stood out, and it stood the test of time. It's The Day the Earth Stood Still.
Oh, yeah.
So, and I'm not...
Klaatu... Oh, I can't remember the whole
Klaatu Barada Nikto.
There we go.
Do not mention Will Smith. Throw that out. Do not mention the remake. Throw that the hell out. It was crap. I'm talking about the original 1951 classic, immortalized in the words of Ash from The Living Dead, The Evil Dead. And it's such a great, the civilization they're talking about there. I mean, we can't spoil it. It's 1951. They've remade it. The intergalactic community of all the planets who came together, and they figured out the one thing we all want. How do you create peace? How do you get peace? And Earth has finally come on to the edge of being accepted by the rest of the universe. Why did we not know there's alien life out there? Because they didn't want to talk to us, because they were waiting. And when we finally got smart enough to start talking to them, they came here and said, yeah, you're a bunch of violent brutes, but we have a solution for that, because everyone was violent brutes before we got the solution. And now it works for everyone. And the answer is a really big, indestructible robot. A really big, indestructible robot that has its own program. And it takes care of war. War is done. The robot handles it, and we get to live our lives. But the robot handles conflict, war, all of it. And you got to think, this is an empire. Essentially, it's an empire that is benevolently ruled by non-living beings that can travel. We have interstellar travel, the highest pinnacle of art, the highest pinnacle of expressing yourself, food and hunger and all the rest. They're all going to go away. But you are going to be dominated, and you are going to be part of the continuum, or you die. I love that. That's, again, stability, power, reach. These are all the things in my criteria, and it's all in 1951.
Cool. It's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah. I try. I was, like I said, my list was going back and forth with old stuff, new stuff. I was all over.
Oh, yeah, I was the same way. Well, for number 5, I went with something that's both books and TV, and that is The Expanse.
Oh, good choice.
The Expanse is, I got hooked into it originally by watching the TV series.
Same thing.
And then that's on Amazon Prime. If you're not watching it, you've made a huge mistake. And that got me into the books. The books were better, but you realize they really did, for the most part, follow the books in the TV series, which is great. The characters are fantastic. You really just enjoy the characters. The setting is fascinating. It's another one where there's clearly a galactic empire that has been out there, and there's clearly an evil force that tried to destroy that empire. And when they open up to mankind and say, here's a gateway that lets you go to all places in the universe, etc., what would happen with mankind? How would mankind turn on itself? You get the Martian colonies, you get the Belters, you get all this wonderful stuff. The politics are great.
Oh, yeah.
The military conflict's great. It's very hard sci-fi for the most part. So, they have to deal, spaceships actually act like real spaceships, unlike everything. Other sci-fi universe. So it's fascinating stuff. I just enjoyed The Expanse across the board.
I've watched the first 4 seasons of The Expanse. I thought it was so brilliantly done because it's so real. The realism, the base of that is intense, and it just makes you more interested because it's like, okay, this is not over the top. This is like, we could do these things. We can realistically, if we had the money and the drive, we could do that now.
Right.
So it's not that fantastical, but yet it is just a little bit into the future. It's just a little bit beyond us. And I loved EarthGov because I really liked EarthGov. I know some people like the Belters, some people like Mars. No, I like EarthGov. And I love the fact that EarthGov was doing the whole Machiavellian super plans, 5 steps ahead of pretty much everyone for most part, and just moving all the little gears to make sure that they were going to have the power and continue to be stable and continue to be in control. The only reason why I didn't include that was because the scope is not big enough. It's just the solar system, even though it goes into, but that's a different civilization once you get into the through the wormhole and you go into all the portals. So that's a different civilization, which we don't really know. So I was really focused on EarthGov. So they didn't quite make my list because it was not big enough.
All right. So what did make your list?
Well, what is big enough is immaterial. It's real, but it's not real. Sounds odd. Well, you know why is because you know this movie, and everyone knows this movie, The Matrix.
It's on my backup list.
See, it made my list because, again, it's
the Matrix universe is fascinating.
Oh yeah,
it leaves you and I'm not talking all the movies. I'm really just I'll
The
focus
first one, especially.
first movie. You start going, but is it so bad that you're in the Matrix? You
Ah,
know,
yeah.
because that's a question that comes out of that movie is, well, if I'm in the Matrix right now and I'm happy, why do I want to be out of the Matrix?
And probably not happy.
Right. And it's a universal question.
Well, it's
How much is the value of freedom?
no, and is it really bad to be the bird in the gilded cage?
Right.
Because life is good in that cage. It is good, especially if you don't see the bars, and no one could. And that's why I was picking the source, because it is the leader of the, because the programs have sentience. They are like Smith. They have sentience. They have agency for themselves. So it isn't just, well, it's one big program. There are individual programs. There is individual sentience and agency. So it qualifies as a civilization in my book for that.
Oh yeah.
Time doesn't matter because no one knows. The entire universe could happen in a second. It's a computer program running the time. Who knows how much time is passing by? So time isn't a factor. Space. The program can make any planet. Oh, we're in a rocket now. Sure, why not? It's a program. We can simulate it. VR. It's you'll never know. So space is also not, and it's completely stable. Yeah, there's these little rebel group running around trying to crash the program, but otherwise everything else is stable, and they have the agents to handle them. And for the most part, up until Neo, yes, they did. They had, and they even that is built into the program with the architect. Yeah, this is the sixth time we've done this. It's not, this has been accounted for. I love that. They thought it all the way through.
Oh yeah.
So that's why, but they only made it to 5. And I think when you see my next couple of choices, you'll see why I've rated it so low. But I thought it was groundbreaking on so many levels, and it is deep. And so that's why it made my list as number 5.
All right. Well, my number 4 was the Galactic Empire from Foundation.
From Foundation. Okay.
Yeah, it's been ages, by the way, since I read the book series, and there's lots of it I don't remember. I remember Mule and the whole concept that humanity would reach a point where they could easily predict the future and take steps to try to preserve knowledge is fascinating. It just, as a kid, I remember reading them, and now it was a few years ago, I started flipping through a copy of Foundation again, and I thought it was kind of less than stellar in terms of my interpretation now that I'm older. But I remember thinking that is such a cool concept, the psychohistory, and knowing like, okay, the empire is going to fall. It's going to fall, and we're going to take steps to preserve the knowledge that we have, because that will be lost when it falls. And there's something very epic about that. And I didn't think the stories were that compelling, but that whole universe and the concepts it presented were just fascinating to me.
I was thinking about Foundation, except I didn't remember it. It's been so long since I read it. I just couldn't. There's so much sci-fi that refers to it and referential, and it kind of mixes in my memory of like what actually happened. What do I think I remember happening? So I didn't include it, but I understand exactly why you would pick it. And yeah, it is foundational. I mean, it's fantastic. Really well done. And I can understand why you would pick that for number 4. And it's funny that you said Galactic Empire. See, but like, and that's the problem in sci-fi. If I go, yeah, the Galactic Empire, there's like 50 billion galactic, and they're all named Galactic Empire.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, which one are we talking about? It could be any of them. But I did pick one of them.
All right.
I for my number 4, I had a Galactic Empire as well. Except my galactic empire is Star Wars and
Ah,
Emperor Palpatine. And I know a lot of people say, well, the Alliance or the Rebels, maybe the Hutts or one of the other, even the Wookiees. People say, oh, there's these different groups. Well, now you're talking about planets for the most part,
right.
or like the Hutts. They kind of have a shadow empire. I mean, they're smugglers. They're not really in charge of anything. They're kind of right below the surface. But the only one who really had control and had everything going pretty much smooth was the Empire. And in fact, yes, you could say, well, there's the Old Republic. They were bigger, they were more powerful, and they got their asses kicked by one guy in less than his lifetime. In less than his lifetime, he was able to put together a plan, take down the entire Old Republic, put himself in charge, and run shit with almost no competition for the rest of his life. That's the Empire.
All right. So I'm going to back your case even stronger because Star Wars is on my list, the Star Wars universe. But I would argue until recent years when we've seen series, we never saw real atrocities committed by the Empire. Now, hear me out.
True.
So the Old Republic allowed slavery because Anakin and his mother were slaves.
True.
The Old Republic, with the Jedi being the legal enforcement, allowed slavery. The Jedi aren't even the good guys of the universe. They rescued Anakin, but at no point did they say, well, let's put together some cash and go buy his mother, get her out of slavery. They never did it at all. As a matter of fact, the Jedi are the bad guys of this whole story. They literally created an order where they enacted justice without due process because they had lightsabers. They went around doing it. Now, so what did the Empire do? Well, the Empire brought order, restored peace, brought an end to a conflict with regardless of who started it and stuff. The war was over. And what happened? A group of terrorists started attacking them.
True.
So now the argument that most people say is, well, but the Death Star blew up Alderaan. Well, it's an admitted terrorist base. It was supporting a rebellion against the Empire. What did you expect them to do? If you want to frame it against today's modern things going on in the Middle East, you can. But, this was the ultimate. We've got to bring order. And the way we bring order is we make a demonstration of our power and control. And what did they do? They waged war. They were a terrorist organization.
True.
And to me, I think that until you get to the series like Andor and some of the more contemporary stuff where you do see that there were some dark sides to the Empire, up through Star Wars, what did they do that was bad? What were they doing that was so horrible?
Isn't there that guy in The Mandalorian, Werner, played by the character actor Werner, who's like, the Empire brings prosperity and order to everywhere it touches.
Yes.
It's like, for a lot of people, the Empire is like evening the playing field for like almost everyone.
Well, the Republic allowed slavery. It allowed galactic criminals like the Hutts. It allowed all this smuggling. It allowed all this, the spice trade, piracy. And so what did the Empire do? The Empire came in and said, we're going to put an end to that stuff. How are they the bad guys for doing the right thing? Well, yeah.
If you look at the books too, in the extended universe, which I know doesn't exist anymore, thank you, Disney dips. But in the extended universe, the Emperor was preparing for the Yuuzhan Vong. He was getting ready. He knew there was a galactic level threat, and nobody was ready. So he made everyone ready.
Right. So I'm going to side with you on that. You're going to. I'll give you the vote because I've got Star Wars on my list.
Okay.
But to me, I think that the empire is misunderstood, and it's told through the perspective of the people who led the rebellion.
Well, the winners always make the stories.
Right.
And so, and this way the empire has been put in the worst light possible. And again, not talking about the emperor. No, I'm talking about
No.
the empire.
Right.
Two different things. Two different things. And so I think that's very, we agree. So there you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what's where are we at? Oh, three. So before we do three,
Okay.
do you have, let's talk about alternatives. Do you have anything that didn't make the list?
I had down Warhammer. While Warhammer's game universe, there's also a ton of novels
Uh-huh.
to fill it out. It's robust. There is a lot in it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and it's complicated. It's not easy to get into. I started it. I really actually started my Warhammer stuff during COVID, and there's not even a good entry point. There's no place where you can go. Like, I just want to get started in Warhammer. It's like, oh, well, you need to read these 200 books and buy these, $10,000 worth of product before you can fully understand what's going on. I'm like,
there's nobody who fully.
I don't want to do that. But I started reading a lot of the books, and I was really fascinated by not only the style of the books but the depth of the Warhammer universe. That was big. I had down the Marvel MCU.
Mm-hmm.
While not an empire, it definitely set an alternate set of civilizations and stuff. That the Marvel MCU was out there, and I think it's hard to ignore them when you're talking about, changes to how we perceive our own planets, etc. I'm trying to think of what else. Oh, I did have down Grimm's War. It's a series by Jeffrey Haskell. I enjoy the heck out of it. It's got the politics and stuff of kind of a Star Wars universe, but it's about a guy who, he's in command of a spaceship, and it's not the big galactic, it's not the flashy, he's not Jim Kirk, but he's got Jim Kirk qualities, but he's aboard kind of the dumpiest ship in the fleet when it starts out. Doesn't even have its jump drive. They have to steal a jump drive for it. Yeah, and it's just a fun series. I think Jeffrey Haskell's done a great job with that. And I like the Drop Trooper series by Rick Partlow. I love what he's done. It's good, hardcore military sci-fi. I enjoy it. It's good stuff. So that's my alternate list.
Okay. Well, I got a couple on there. I'll save some for before we do number one. But what The Expanse was on my alternate list. And we were talking a little bit about that. Again, EarthGov in particular to me, forget the aliens, EarthGov, but it wasn't big enough. It wasn't stable enough. But it was real close. And because they're so realistic, and you know what? They defeat the idea that you can't talk about politics in sci-fi and make it interesting. Hell yes, you can. You just need a good writer.
No, you know what it is? Let me rephrase your statement there. You don't have to necessarily tie it to modern day politics.
Not modern day, no.
And they did politics that had no real ties to what's going on right now.
Yeah,
I like that. I love that.
It doesn't have to be, everything doesn't have to be an allegory. It was just the politics for them at their time that they were dealing with. But people always say, well, you can't do politics. It would be a political story. I'm like, sure you can. King Arthur is political.
Right.
If it's just about how did you write it. Read the Once and Future King. That's political. For King Arthur's time, his idea, not allegory. It is for what it is. So, I mean, that was one.
I can't hear you. I don't know if anyone else can. I can't hear you.
1 second.
There you go.
Yeah. That was my system just glitched for a second on the sound. Okay.
Cool.
So there's that. And the one I really, really wanted to bring in that I really wanted to, I just couldn't justify it. Planet of the Apes. The apes, the civilization of the apes is fantastic. Their number one law: ape does not kill ape. Created
Yep.
by Caesar himself right after he took over from humanity. And they have, and if you, I remember, in the 1960s, they made an entire series. What was 5 different movies, and they kept going through the timeline leading up to it. It's a loop. The 5 movies turned into
Oh,
a
yeah.
loop. So you go from Planet of the Apes as being the first movie, and it loops around to how they get to that in the first place, and how Caesar takes over in the first place. I thought it was really great how they did all those stories, and they interconnected it. And the apes are smart, and they looked at civilization and said, we can do it better. Make it simple, make it better. And they did, for the most part. I like that, except it's just way too small. It's the planet kind of, and not beyond, and it's not really sci-fi, or it's alternate universe. So it's like, I want this in, but it compared to, like the Matrix or The Day the Earth Stood Still, you can't beat that. So that's why it was one of my alternates. I'll give you one more of my alternates, which will probably surprise some people. Stargate. Stargate did not make my list.
Stargate didn't make my list, but it's mostly because I didn't consider it. Stargate was great because Stargate is Star Trek without a prime directive. I mean,
Yes.
we show up and it's like, here, have some guns. Yeah. We're not bound by not interfering here. We interfere all the time. And there were some great Uber plot lines tied to Stargate.
Well, in the TV series, SG-1 series that came out, there was another one I didn't watch, didn't follow, no one did. But I know SG-1 was going on for a long time off the basic premise of the movie itself. My problem is, okay, so Earth civilization can't handle anything. We just kind of dumb luck, we found a portal, and what do? We're not even really sure what the hell we're doing. So it's not like our civilization is so much better. And the I don't even remember their name now. The guy from Crying Gang, he was one of them. Fake Ra. Even those aliens didn't have all the technology. They basically found a lot of the technology, and they just knew how to apply it better. And so they said, well, we've got a better gun than you do, so we're the boss. You follow us now. And because we never really got to the originators, like the people who actually made the Stargates would be the civilization I would have picked. We never really got to see them. So it didn't make my list because no one really is the top dog. Everyone's kind of like, I got a planet, you got a planet, but I got a bigger gun, and we got a Stargate. Now, doesn't make my rules. So those are some of my alternates, but let's jump to what's your number 3?
Well, one more we should have thrown on the alternate list was Babylon 5. Babylon 5 didn't make my list, didn't make my alternate list, but there's bound to be people out there who are screaming, why isn't it on here? I just didn't. Babylon 5 was so dependent on its own story that they didn't have standalone episodes. They didn't have an episode that just carried a story on its own. It was all tied to a very larger plot, and that made it ponderous for me, but it was fascinating.
Yeah, it was a great universe. It was a lot of things just weren't, as much as they made things clear, they weren't clear.
Right.
And you really had to delve in with both feet to really get to the things that were left on the sides, that they didn't have the money or time to deal with for whatever reason. I think they would have really benefited making Babylon 5 about 10 years later than when they did.
Yeah.
It was too far ahead of its time. It had all the roots of what could have really developed into, and if they had more seasons, a little more time, a little more money, they probably could have really delved into it great.
Yeah.
it was just too far ahead of its time.
Well, my number three is it's almost obligatory. It's Dune. You know,
Mhm.
Dune does such a great job of not just world building, but of universe building, and really addresses the role of religion and how races deal with religion and how power is accumulated and held, and how a feudal society is probably the most interesting way to rule a galactic empire given its size and scope. There was some Dune. Just I'm kind of I feel like I'm required to put Dune on the list. So it's
I get it.
the thing is Dune is so there's so many of the books and they're so thick and they're so ponderous at times. I, they're not books I go back to. I think the recent movies have done a very good job of hitting the key points of it and carrying the story forward. I think it's good, but Dune had to make my list at number 3.
I'll talk about Dune in a second, but I get everything you're saying about Dune. I get everything you're saying about Dune. I will mention at this moment that while I like the Vinay, what's his name? Vinay, the director,
Oh,
Villeneuve.
I don't know him.
His name is like Villeneuve or Villeneuve. I apologize. I don't mean to be insulting. I just don't remember how to pronounce his name right. Denis Villeneuve, I think it is. He had a great vision for it, very different than what we have seen in the past. I think that the Sci-Fi Channel version was a better story, not better visuals, but a better story. But I think he got the visuals really, really well. And I think there's aspects of even the first movie that were Kyle MacLachlan is a great Paul Atreides.
Oh yeah.
I do not like the kid's just too skinny. I don't like him. In the second movie, he kind of justifies himself, but he's still too skinny, too dorky. Kyle MacLachlan, I think, really comes. He's small, but he's athletic, and
Right.
he's got innocence, but he's not too innocent. I mean, he's deep in the middle of interplanetary politics. He's the son of the Duke. He would know things. He's not completely naive. He'd have some kind. I mean, he's physically training all the time. He'd have some kind of muscle and capability. So I mean, those are nitpicks on it, but I see exactly what you're saying there. But for my number 3, I went with someone who would stomp. Well, no. It's kind of tough because these top 3, who knows who would win if they were to fight each other. But
Right.
for me, I went to Doctor Who, and I didn't pick the Time Lords. I know a lot of people going, Time Lord, but Mike, it's Doctor Who.
You went with the Daleks.
Of course. It is the Daleks. Of course. It has to be the Daleks. Their civilization is like almost perfect. And who puts fear into the Time Lords? The Daleks. Who can manage and manipulate time almost as well? The Daleks. Who has an empire that reaches, is limitless and timeless? The Daleks. And got the technology to back it all up. Have no fear. That's why they say to everyone, exterminate. Why? Because you're not a Dalek, and there should be nothing but Daleks. I love them. They're just a little too insane to make it higher on my list because they are point blank insane. But God, I love the Daleks. You can't have Doctor Who without Daleks.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I honestly, and I'm old school Tom Baker,
Yeah,
that era. That
yes.
I haven't watched Doctor Who in a few years, and there's a lot of reasons for it.
I like the 10th Doctor. 10th Doctor was good. 9th and 10th. 9th was good just to get back into it. 10th, David Tennant in that version, fantastic. When he's done, other than River Song with Matt Smith and 1 or 2 episodes with Peter Capaldi, the diamonds when he's breaking through the. There's one or two episodes with Peter Capaldi. That's it. Like,
yeah.
And then I'm done. I can't watch it anymore. Can't watch
Yeah,
it.
it's gotten weird, but you picked a good one. I knew right off the bat when you went to Doctor Who that you were going to pick the Daleks. I just
Yeah,
knew
I
it.
guarantee I'm going to get somebody at some point is going to be complaining about, but it's the Time Lords. I'm like, no, not the Time Lords.
When Gallifrey falls. You know,
Yeah, yeah, you know,
you
boom,
know,
it's gone.
It's good stuff. My number two is just Star Wars in general from a universe perspective. I'm pretty much stopping when I say that with Andor. Nothing after the series Andor counts in my book because I haven't enjoyed any of it after that. But I've enjoyed the first two seasons of The Mandalorian were fantastic. You know, it's a robust universe. There's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of really cool aspects to it that could be explored and should be explored. I love the old extended universe a great deal. There's
Mm-hmm.
parts of the new universe I like. I don't enjoy the new trilogy of movies,
No,
but that's because I'm a writer and I look at things through the perspective of being a writer, and I'm like, it's bad characters,
mm-hmm.
weak plot,
Mm-hmm.
pushing things that aren't necessary. I'm talking old school Star Wars, the first 6 movies and first few TV shows that were done. And that stuff still inspires and captivates. My grandson is 15 years old, and once a month we have a Star Wars discussion and debate in the car, taking him to guitar. He wants to go through aspects of it, and it's fun because it still inspires new fans and inspires new creations.
Well, they aspired to be inspiring in the original iterations of it,
Yeah.
and they reach for the stars. And the old saying is, you reach for the stars because if you get the clouds, you've succeeded. And in this case, they actually got the stars. Lightning struck. He got it. He got it right. And the prequels weren't. That was him getting the clouds. Again, he was reaching for the stars. He got the clouds when he did the prequels. But I can respect that because it made sense. He had a theme, a goal, and it worked. And you can see Vader's trilogy. You can see the development of the universe, the civilization, and how it had its changes, good and bad, and how it affected all these different people. It was really coherent.
Well,
And
the only real problem I've had with the trilogy, and I had this discussion with my grandson, so I'll voice it. I said, the outcome of the entire trilogy before you see the first movie.
true.
Anakin Skywalker is going to become Darth Vader. And when you know the ending to something, the magic is lost.
That is something I feel bad for kids these days because I being older, we went through it as they made it.
Yeah.
So when we saw 3, there was nothing else. When we saw 4, New Hope, which was to me and always is, that's just Star Wars. There were no chapters. There was no other. It was just Star Wars. Period. Full stop. And then we got Empire Strikes Back, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, what is this?" And then we got, and they grew, and each time it was something brand new to the story, to our understanding of the story and the universe. And then came the books and the extended universe. I kind of accept Road One. Realistically, I'm like most people. The last 2 minutes, when you see Darth Vader just kick ass and take names, that's why I saw the movie. That's why I saw that, because I don't care about anyone else. And Andor means nothing to me. That it just doesn't work for me. And I'll even go to episode, what is it, 7? Even though J.J. Abrams made it, and it's just a rehash of Star Wars, and not the best. It's a good mediocre film, like a 6 out of 10. And I like that. And then full stop. And I don't watch anything. I can't stand Disney Star Wars. Can't stand it. But like I said, I already picked Star Wars on my list, and they were relatively low. But my number 2 happened to be Dune. I picked them as number 2, and you'll see why. So yeah, I went from going to Doctor Who to Dune because classic and impressive and expansive, and 30 in particular, the time frame, the civilization in Dune that I'm picking, because everyone thinks of Paul Atreides, everyone thinks of the Sardaukar and the Emperor Pashtan, and we think of that battle that we saw in all the movies that have come out recently. That's not what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of Duke Leto II, Paul Atreides' son, who becomes God Emperor of Dune, who becomes the great man worm and rules the entire universe, all of mankind and the universe, for 3,500 years. 3,500 years under his rule, because he had a vision and he has a plan to make humanity survive. He put them on the golden path. And so he's managing everything, every fight, every battle, every conflict, every argument. It's all part of the plan. And he knows it, and no one else knows. And people love him, and they hate him, and they're terrified of him, and he's a despot, and he's doing it all because he's an angel, and nobody knows it. And he's got it all figured out. And he can't tell anyone. He can't, because even if he tried, you couldn't conceive of it without being him. It was too much for even for his father, Paul, saw it and said, I can't do that. I am terrified. I won't do that. So his son said, but I will. So that is the part of Dune, that empire of Dune that I wanted. Power, stability, reach, everything right there. That's my number 2. Now, before we go to the number 1, you can understand why I picked that time period, that civilization in Dune. Yes.
Oh yeah, hell yeah. That, but there's so much there that builds. It is interwoven to the earlier stuff too, and it's just great. It's just great.
It's deep, it's intricate, and I like my intricate, and that's in the books, by the way, for people who don't know. There is kind of sort of an allusion to it in the Sci-Fi Channel series Children of Dune, but it's in the books, and it's well worth reading the book. I think it's fantastic. So we've both touched on books, we've touched on cartoons, we've touched on anime. One of the things that I didn't get to touch on are 2 things in my alternate list that I really want. Actually, three things. One, I wanted to have Flash Gordon, Ming the Merciless, his empire. He has basically an entire universe outside of Earth that he controls. With planets upon planets, and everything's ruled by him, and he's in despot, and he's having the best time of his life. This is the best of the universe he could have, and he controls it all. And especially from the radio series and the 1950s version, although I do love the 1980s because Max von Sydow is just he's a great actor. But it's that universe, so I couldn't include that. I really wanted to get in Starship Troopers, which is overlooked by Philip K. Dick, and also the Paul Verhoeven movie. While a lot of people go, it's satirical, it's fantastic. It's so satirical that it satirizes the satire and brings it back to being serious again.
Highline knew what he was doing, man.
It's fantastic. I just love that movie. I thought he did it well. I think even though Verhoeven, he didn't understand he glanced over the material, so he didn't really get what he was. He only got the surface of part of it, and yet he still encapsulates more of what Philip K. Dick was trying to get to than he realized, which is why it's a satire of a satire, and why it's really, I think, a well done classic cult movie. But the aliens, the insects, are bugs. they're acting pretty much on instinct. Not that they're mindless, but they're not mindful. They're not really purposive. They're protecting their territory and maybe expanding it, but they see us as just another animal. They're acting mostly on animal instinct, maybe a little bit more organized, but kind of like a bee colony, an ant colony, just on bigger scope. So can't go with that. And Earth is kind of not really as organized as any of the other civilizations. So that's why they didn't make it on my list. Uh, the last one is something a little esoteric. A lot of people haven't seen this book series from the 1980s. I read the first 3, I think, out of 5 books. It's really interesting. Have you ever heard of the War of the Couture?
No.
Couture is spelled, it's not like in the video games. It's entirely different. It's Chtorr, War of the Couture series. And it's kind of like what we're seeing in They Live. This is from 1983, written by David Gerald, is the guy who wrote it.
Oh, yeah. Famous Star Trek writer.
Yeah.
And the Trouble with Tribbles.
He brings in kind of that element because it's an invasion of Earth, but this time, but unlike in They Live or other movies, we know it's an invasion of a sort because there's a bunch of gigantic purple worms. Think like D&D giant purple worms. Yes, except they're pink and fuzzy. We have mushrooms and plant life that have nothing to do with Earth that are on Earth, and the planet is changing. So we're under an invasion. We just don't really understand why or by who or who's the one behind it all. We don't know who the leaders, who the planner is. We don't understand it. And the whole thing in the story is both trying to deal with the changes that are happening onto the planet, trying to figure out how to stop that from happening, if at all, because we don't even know how it's happening, and also to find out who's doing this. Maybe even why, but that's kind of a second thing. And you have a couple of key characters going through several of the books that are trying to, that's our eyes through this process. I really did enjoy it. It's not well known by pretty much a lot of people, but those who have read it and like sci-fi, I think you will find that to be compelling. But again, it's too odd a story, and I didn't read the entire series. I only read half of it, so I didn't include that. But that's why it's not on my top 10 list. But that brings us to, do you have anything else on your alternate list that did not make it?
Skynet.
Skynet, Terminator. Okay. Yeah,
Terminator, Skynet. But I haven't watched the later movies, so
don't be upset about that.
Yeah, I know, but I didn't feel that I could adequately put it in. But I thought Skynet was very interesting. Because especially in a world where we're having debates about AI, Skynet takes over. It's AI and realizes that the problem with humanity is humanity exists. And
this is what happens when you don't have the 3 rules.
Right. So that was one on my list that I just thought it's a distinctly unique empire, and it's willing to do time travel to protect itself. That's pretty cool.
I thought about Terminator, and then I kind of got into some of the others on the list, so I didn't even really think about it beyond. But yeah, I don't think it would have made my list because it's still Earth-based.
Yeah.
Even though there's time travel, they're not going to other planets.
Yeah. So
it wouldn't have made my list, but yeah, it would have made my mentions. That was pretty good. That's a good one. But with that said, we've got a little bit of the build up here. So what do you think is your number one?
The Star Trek universe, the entire Star Trek universe, I think is good up through DS9. After that, the only thing worth watching after DS9 is season 3 of Picard, which is probably the best television that I've seen in the last few years. But I think Star Trek lays a lot of fascinating cultures to us. Mm-hmm. Gives us the Klingon Empire, the Romulan Empire, and they're very different. And they're, it gives us individual planet cultures. It gives us a way that these are all interconnected and interact. I don't like the latter day stuff. I liked the new movies, but I didn't love the new movies.
Mhm.
But one of my favorite movies, my number one movie of all time, is Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan.
Oh
It
yeah.
is it is my favorite movie, period. And I just find that to me, Star Trek is something that if Star Trek hadn't happened, as I said before, I don't think you'd have a lot of modern science fiction as we know it.
Oh yeah. I think Star Trek helped to create, like Flash Gordon. Star Trek helped to create Star Wars, which created pretty much everything else. They're foundational, kind of like the Lord of the Rings is foundational to fantasy.
Oh,
You
God.
pretty much can't have any of the fantasy without Lord of the Rings. They all
Well,
came out.
you did have Conan the Barbarian and stuff,
Yeah.
and I mean the early pulp stuff was out there still, but Lord of the Rings changed the game.
Well, that brings up Cthulhu. Why isn't Cthulhu or any Lovecraft on my list? Or for me, I didn't include because you brought it up. The old ones in Cthulhu and Yog Sothoth and the rest of them. Yes, I do remember even some of their. I do know this thing. I know some of their names. Um, they're not civilizations. They're
No,
gods
right.
that just happen to all be, existing kind of at the same time. They're all actually elements of the dream of the ancient one who's asleep right now. We're just some kind of like nightmare dream this ancient god is having, which tells you how screwed up that is. But I didn't include it because none of Lovecraft isn't civilization. It's gods.
Yeah.
Totally different thing. Probably do a show on that all on its own, but it's not civilization. So that's why I didn't include Lovecraft before anyone comes and says, "Oh my God, Mike, you just didn't." No, doesn't apply. But go ahead. I'm sorry. So that
That
was
was my number one. We hit it pretty hard earlier too.
yeah, we did. And like I said, I can't say no. I just looked at a section of it. So absolutely, I agree with you on it. But my number one, I think, doesn't surprise people who know me well. We were talking about it a little bit, actually, and that is Warhammer 40K. Because, like on many lists, Warhammer beats everybody. Because Warhammer is more over the top than just about anything and everything you can name. Hell, they've even got Lovecraft because that's Slanesh. That's one of the gods of the warp. That's Slanesh. That's Lovecraft. So, I
Yeah.
mean, they've got everything in
Yeah,
there.
they stole from everybody, and you got space orcs. You got it all.
And everything's dialed up to 11. There is nothing. The most normal thing is probably the Imperial Guard. And if we were to look at them in a real world war, they're basically all a bunch of Supermen. They're a bunch of Captain Americas running around the field, and they're considered peons. They're just cannon fodder.
Yeah,
Can you imagine platoons of, not just platoons, planets of Captain Americas being thrown away as like so much chaff to try and take anything, a city, a planet, and it's meaningless. It means nothing because there are trillions in the army, and there's just another couple trillion to replace everyone that died. They don't care. Everything's dialed up to 11. Everything's over the top. Nothing is simple. Come on, the Space Marines, which happen to be 8 feet tall, okay, they're no longer, they're barely capable of being called human anymore, and they know it. Their handgun fires 40 millimeter rockets. That's their bullets. That's what they consider a bullet, a 40 millimeter self-propelled rocket, okay? And the Emperor of Mankind, the Imperium, has been around for 10,000 years. They are the rock that keeps the universe together. The orcs can't take over the universe because mankind exists. The Tyranids can't take over the galaxy because mankind exists. The Dark Eldar can't have their fetish fun with everybody because mankind exists. We are the rock that keeps everyone together. The blueberries, the Tau would love to make everyone believe in their little space communism. Not going to happen because they're one, communist, and two, because of mankind. Mankind is the little linchpin. We hold it all together through this over the top, beyond all comparison. Nothing scales up to 40K in any kind of way whatsoever. And nobody is as stable, as far reaching, as powerful as the Imperium of Mankind. And that also all ties back to the Emperor of Mankind, the God Emperor of Man, who is sitting on a throne, putting out a lighthouse beacon throughout the warp to let all of mankind know you are loved and you are controlled, and you will be grateful for both. How can I not look at that civilization?
You know, that was on my alternate list. You know that.
Yeah.
Warhammer 40K is hard to ignore from a science fiction presence. It is just, there's so many aspects to it. And quite frankly, there's something there for everybody.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a mech guy. I got the Adeptus Titanicus. You know, I can drive the Titans around.
And the Tau. The Tau have their little mini mechs too.
Yeah. I mean, you know, there's a lot to it. It's just, it's become such a big thing. They've got to find a way to get people in. And it's hard for somebody who's coming up in gaming, I would think, to jump in at 40K. It's just, you can with the Killzone stuff. And
no. Now, I've been a fan of Warhammer 40K since 92.
Ooh.
So shortly after I came back from Moscow, when I was living over there, about 92-ish, I got into Warhammer, the figurines, and I just loved painting it. And then from that, I got into the book. And I would recommend the best way to really get into it, get the Space Marine Codex. I have like the third, I actually still have somewhere. I lost like 95% of all my stuff when I lost my house. But I have somewhere, I do have the third edition Space Marine Codex. And I have the first Necron Codex as well. But I would say read that first. And it's a lot of the game stuff, but there's also a huge, half the book is lore. And that gives you your introduction. And from there, I think the way to navigate through Warhammer is find the stories, the section or the type of story that you like, and then just read that. Because you can read just mech, like for the Adeptus Mechanicus, the Scholarum Titanicus, you could read just their stories, no problem. There's a whole section of stories just about that, and you don't have to worry. And you know, the rest of the universe kind of flows in and out of that, but you can read just stuff about that and be perfectly happy. So that's what I love about Warhammer. You can just have your niche in the universe, and you're happy. Go for it, and it still fits.
So I like it. It's a force to be reckoned with. It really is.
Oh yeah, and I hope and pray. I'm glad that Henry Cavill is doing. Supposedly, they're still on track. People are worried. It's a little bit rocky, but at this moment, it looks like they're going to make the TV series with Amazon. And Amazon, having learned from their failure with Rings of Power, are working with an actual fan who is deeply rooted in the fandom, in the gameplay, because Cavill is very well noted as being a Custodes fan, not this Femstodes bullshit that they're trying to throw in their DEI. Kick that out. He's classic, and he understands the storyline. That I think can make it work. If we see Amazon put in their priorities, it will absolutely fail, just like Rings of Power has failed. But if they pull this off, this is going to be an explosion in sci-fi like we've never seen, because everyone can make a movie about every aspect. And I don't care what you personally believe or whatever it is you like, everybody can then jump in and go, and here's an aspect for you.
There are so many great IPs and franchises out there like Warhammer that when they return through old movies and redo them, I cringe, because it's like you could just adapt to there's so much new material out there that would be awesome as a short series or an ongoing series or a movie or whatever. They don't do that. They want to go back and redo, Red Dawn. They want to redo every movie we've ever had from our youth. And I'm like, these were already successful. Don't mess with it. I saw a meme the other day. Somebody said, stop remaking movies we love. Remake the movies that were done poorly but had really good concepts.
I've heard some people saying that recently.
And I'm like, yeah, that's what we need. There's so much original stuff out there. Go to it and tap it.
It's like when they had Schwarzenegger did Judge Dredd, and it was too campy. It wasn't quite right. And then they redid it in 2012 with Dredd, with what's his name?
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah,
Bones.
And did it perfect. Carl Urban, yes. And he got it right and kept the damn helmet on and got it right. And do more of stuff like that. Like, we couldn't do it before. We didn't have tech. We can do it now. Let's do it right. Battlestar Galactica, they redid that. Not quite to my liking, but I like the elements of it. Do that. Why do we have to but do it once, let it go. Just remake it once, let it go, because it was a near miss. It was almost a home run. Give it a try, and then go on to something new. Go on to something else.
They keep going back to the old stuff, and they take stuff that's really good. And Star Trek did this. When they did Star Trek Into the Darkness, it was a takeoff of Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. Don't do that. Don't even try going there.
I haven't liked anything with
never going to do it right.
J.J. Abrams ruined Star Trek. To me, this is me. When I look at J.J. Abrams' Kirk, and no offense to the actor, because I think he's okay. I'm not really impressed with him, but his Kirk, he's an arrogant prick. I don't know why anyone's friends with him. I don't know why anyone would follow him. And again, this is someone who's never been, JJ, never served a day in his life, probably never been around a soldier in his life. Because you don't follow pricks just because he says, I'm the boss. No, you got to earn the respect. You got to earn the leadership. I have to believe that you have some competence whatsoever. Just because you have a title means nothing. There's more to it than just having the rank. And they never address that. And he's just an asshole. And he's flying by the seat of his pants. I'm surprised he doesn't get everyone killed every time he makes a decision. I can't stand that Star Trek.
Yeah,
which is why I haven't watched Star Trek since DS9.
I will tell you, the only thing you need to watch, the best season of any television that's come out in the last few years, is Picard season 3. It is literally ties a ribbon on every storyline and plot from Star Trek The Next Generation with the cast. It delivers on every front. And it was because they understood who their audience was. Mm-hmm. And they gave their audience exactly what they wanted and did it in a spectacular way. And if you like the Borg, you need to be watching that.
Okay. I've heard a lot of people say that is something worth watching. I just couldn't muster the strength because I hate what Paramount has done. I hate the whole STD.
I agree with you across the board, but I'm going to tell you, my friend, season 3 of Picard, it is beyond a home run. It is, if you are not at least got a tear welling in your eye at the end of that, you have failed. It It is old school, next generation delivered today. And fortunately, the entire cast is still alive.
They got lucky with that one.
They got very lucky with it. And, it's the send off that everybody deserves, is a good send off.
Well, let me give you one tip, something pure popcorn. It's not significant. It's not serious. It's stupid, and it's insane, and it's dumb, and it's horrible. The acting at best is passable. The writing is subpar on the good days. The CGI is like PlayStation 2. I mean, it is so bad on almost every single level, so that it's approaching the Toxic Avenger kind of levels of bad. So bad that it's good. And they got a season 2, which blew my mind, because I never thought it was going to get a season 2. I think I publicly put out a tweet, said it's never going to get a season 2 because this is so bad, but it's so camp. You can't help but love it. Anthony Mackie stars in Twisted Metal.
Okay.
And I think it's on Paramount, and they gave it a season. They gave it a season 2, which blows my mind, because this thing does not deserve a season 2. It is trash, but it is popcorn trash. You will keep watching the trash, going, "This is miserable," and you will keep. And the best
It's
thing
the Tiger King. It's the Tiger King effect. We all saw Tiger King, and we were like, "This is crazy." I started watching the follow up to it, which is Chimp Crazy.
Yeah.
Same producer, but it's about people who keep chimps for pets. It's just as crazy. And the thing is, we kept watching it.
Yeah,
It's like, this gets more and more zany, horrible, horrific, and we kept watching it. That's what you want.
That's Twisted Metal, and probably the best. Anthony Mackie is not the best character, not the best actor, nor the best character in the series, even though he's the biggest name. Sweet Tooth. Now, this is based on a video game. Remember back in the 80s? You'll probably remember there was a video game, which was Twisted Metal. It's all of these characters. Well, a couple of the classic characters are in the TV show.
Okay.
And Sweet Tooth, who's like the big character from the Twisted Metal video game series, is in, and I love his character. It's just so off the wall, just balls off the walls, crazy. I love his character. I love his character jokes. You will enjoy it. You will, like I said, you'll be having the popcorn going, "This is so miserable," but watch the whole damn thing. Before you know, it'll be over and be like, "That was so horrible. How did they make that? Why is it getting a season 2?" But with that said, so we've gone through the list. Was it fun?
Oh, it's fun. It's always fun, because we had a lot of things that we both agreed on, just their positioning was different.
That's true. And yet we still also got a couple of new things that I think we both were surprised by, like, oh, wow, I hadn't heard about that or seen that. And I hope everyone in the audience is also getting a wonderful opportunity to learn about or remember movies, books, TV shows. And we didn't even get really into the anime. It gets a little crazy. And I couldn't find the right anime. No, even though, yes, I love Vegeta. Vegeta rules. And right after Vegeta would be Krillin. I know that. But the Saiyans were slaves, so they didn't get a civilization. And, so I didn't go with that. But that being said, I hope you guys are enjoying that every Saturday. I'm doing a top 10 challenge in sci-fi. We have more people to come. Next week is going to be Forest Mommy. We're our first woman on the panel with her challenge. And to be fair, she's a relative noob. I mean, she knows movies like Aliens and Star Wars. Pretty much everyone does. But she isn't really into sci-fi, but she'll be on, and she's going to give us her top 10 list, which should be interesting to hear. Totally different perspective, and I hope people will enjoy that. Please like, share, and subscribe. Go out to Blaine's, all of his different channels. Go to his Facebook, like that, join up, follow his books that he's been writing, the old ones and the new ones. Give him your support. And for me, just, like, share, subscribe, especially on Old Man Vass. It's a new channel. I barely have anyone there. Give me some support so I can start calling some of the big names out there. And not to say you're not a big name, Blaine, because you damn well are. But I'd love to try and get some of the senators or some of the members of Congress that I know to come on. And I can't do it until you guys subscribe. Then I can convince them, because they'll be afraid to, they'll lose votes if they don't do it.
All right.
But with that said, any closing words, Blaine?
No, hey, thanks for having me on. It's been great reconnecting with you, and it was a lot of fun. It's really a challenge to sit down and figure this stuff out.
It is harder than people think. Once it's like, yeah, I could do that. Yeah, sit down and make your list. It's tough. All right. So with that said, folks, and wow, we did it in 2 hours. Not bad. It's about average time. So we did it right on time. With that said, folks, I want to thank you, and we're going to do the outro, and I will see you next Saturday, 3 p.m. with Forest Mommy, and another Sci-Fi Top 10 Challenge.